Hi, friends. Well, today is Monday, and I wanted to go over your first assignment, which is just shooting, and then importing or setting up Lightroom, making a catalog and so on, and then importing your images into Lightroom. So first, let's take a look at some of your images. We'll just look at them pretty quickly. Let me share the screen here. And so the assignment was to go out and shoot about 30 images. So what I had in mind was, of course, that you guys go out and shoot, not just pull in images from, things you had done earlier. So you guys all have some really nice images, but for example, this image says it was made in July of 2018. And there were others of that sort. So from now on, anyway, I really want you to go out and shoot images for this class. Doesn't take that long, usually, depending on the assignment, but regardless, images for this class are to have been made on or after September 26th, which is the first day of this term. So some of you also should probably look at the date stamp setting for your cameras. So for example, this one says, pardon, that it was made on January 1st of 2016. And a whole lot of them in that set say that they were all made on January 1st, 2016. And I'm going to assume that they were not made 6 years ago. So you might want to check that out. Okay. So that said, I'm glad you submitted images, and we'll use them to get started in Lightroom. So hopefully you all have Lightroom, access to Lightroom from Adobe. So sorry. And have installed it on your computer. And we are using Lightroom Classic. So not the general Adobe Creative Cloud Lightroom or CC, but Lightroom Classic. And so if you look down here in my dock, I think you can see it. It says Adobe Lightroom Classic, and I'll click on that. And you get this screen coming up, and I'm going to say I want to create a new catalog. And I will entitle it Photo for Fall 2022. Okay, and you can entitle it whatever you want. And for right now, where am I going to put it? I have a hard drive that's dedicated to my class stuff. And this is it. And so you can do as you like, of course, but I do recommend that you get a hard drive, an external hard drive to store your work on, your images. Up to you, however. But do not store your images on the memory cards that that you use for your cameras. Don't use those for long-term storage. Don't use little thumb or flash drives for long-term storage, because they're very easily corrupted, very easily lost. Right? Okay, so there's my photo for folder, fall 2022, and I'll just make a new folder for Lightroom. Just say LR for Lightroom. And I will say create. And now it will open to my new catalog. And the catalog is where all of the images that you import into Lightroom will live. And you can make different catalogs for different subjects or different times, different classes, whatever. So this is the catalog I'm making for our class this term. And the first thing I want to do is set the preferences for my catalog. And so this is the, as you can see, this is the window for Lightroom, and we'll go over what it all means in much more detail. But there are, if you look here at the upper right, there are 7 different what are called modules. The first says library, and develop, then map, book, slideshow, print, and web. And we'll spend the majority of our time in library and develop. Library, excuse me, is where all of your images will show. So if you look on the left-hand panel, it says all photographs and so on, folders, collections. And as we add images into the catalog, they'll show up here. So the catalog, I'm going to go up here to the pull down menus, and first I will select preferences and a window will come up. We'll start with general, and for the most part, our settings are, the defaults are fine, but there are a few that I think you should change. So the first is default catalog. When starting up, use this catalog. And this is what I want. Prompt me when starting catalog. These are the two. So there's several choices you can have. Load most recent catalog. That means whatever you opened last time will open this time. Prompt me when starting Lightroom, which means that whenever I open Lightroom, it'll ask which catalog I want to open. Or I can select a specific catalog to open first each time. So I'm going to set it at prompt me when starting Lightroom. I keep the sounds off because I find them irritating. And then import options, I have the first 2 checked, and these are default, and that's fine. So next up here after general, it says presets, and I leave that for the time being, leave that to the defaults. External editing, excuse me. So the file format, this is not showing the entire wording here, but anyway, a TIFF format is fine. Color space is ProPhoto RGB. You can see Adobe is more than 20 years old. The bit depth 16, which gives it a more, more information. Resolution at 300 is fine. No compression. So we want all of the information. Then additional external editor, custom is fine. And then the same settings are fine. The default for resolution is 240, and that's fine. File handling. I keep this set to DNG, and it doesn't matter if it's upper or lowercase. And then the previews, I like to have full size and embed the fast loading data, so the basics, but not the original raw file, because then that makes it a huge, huge size, and it opens more slowly. For some reason that I don't know, Lightroom treats most characters as illegal. Forward slashes, colons, the number sign, anything really, except for a period or a dash. And it says here, treat the following characters as illegal. These are your choices, either everything or these two, but it does treat everything as illegal. So just use dashes if you need to in the titles of your images, because Lightroom will reject pretty much everything else. Okay. Interface, these are the settings for how your, the appearance of Lightroom, the font size, the background color, and so on. I leave the settings to the defaults, but you can certainly change them. You can change the font size to large. You can have the background be gray, dark gray rather than black, whatever you like. And finally, performance. the big thing here is you want the maximum size to be at least 50 gigabytes. Because smaller than that will not give enough space or size capacity, I guess, for Lightroom really to work well with your images, because they can get to be pretty big. And if you don't give enough room for Lightroom to work, it gets kind of cramped and it'll be very slow, or it may not work at all. Okay, so the rest of these, this is Lightroom Sync. That's when you're working with the other Lightroom CC, and it syncs to your other devices if you wanted to. Display, if you have other displays, you can set that here. Network, if you're working online, again with Lightroom CC, probably will set those things. And now that's it for the preferences. You can close that out and then go to catalog settings. There are only 3 here. The first one is general, and what you want to set is when the catalog will back up. And you have several, well, you have 6 choices. And the one I use is every time Lightroom exits. So things get backed up every time. And I think that's important, just in case, you never know. And Lightroom usually kind of backs stuff up anyway, but I think it's safer to have it set this way. Next, file handling. So with your preview caches, the default says auto size, which is fine. Preview quality medium, I like it to be high. And then automatically discard previews. I don't want them tossed. I just want to keep them. So that's how I set it. The import sequence numbers, import number 1, that's what I leave it at. If it's important to you to have the numbers set in another way, that's fine. And finally, metadata. I leave these ones checked. Offer suggestions from recently entered values, include developed settings in metadata inside JPEG, TIFF, PNG, and PSD files. I do not have this one checked, automatically write changes into XMP, because XMP files are separate files that are made that store the metadata and information and so on. And I don't want extra files, pretty much. Address lookup, that's up to you if you want the GPS coordinates and so on, and the address suggestions if the address box is empty, up to you. Okay. Face detection, up to you. And write date or time changes into proprietary raw files. I don't have that checked, but up to you again. Okay, so I'll close this out, and just to make sure it's all set, I'm going to quit Lightroom. And it says, do I really want to quit? I say yes. Do I want to back it up? And I will say yes. And now it closes out. And I'll open it up again, and there's that splash page. And then my new catalog, the one I just made, shows up at the top of this window. So this window, as you make new catalogs, there'll be a list of these catalogs in the order in which you've worked on them. So here's the new one I made, and you can double click it or hit open. And here we are. So I want to import my images into the library. And I want to go over some of the settings you'll be looking out for before we do that, and the structure of Lightroom. So every module, each module, library, develop, map, and so on, are structured in the same way visually. So you have the center window, and then a panel on either side. And in the library module, the panel to the left shows your images, the images that you've imported into Lightroom. The first setting, or the first listing here, is the catalog, and the catalog is the main thing that holds or lists your images. And then folders, you you import folders in or make folders. Collections are sets of images where you've designated certain characteristics, either a date, could be date or place or time, or certain other attributes that you want to collect into a group. And then after that, published services, which we're not going over right now, but you can import or set these up and import images into these things. Okay. So we're more concerned with catalogs, folders, and collections. So I'm just going to close published services for right now. On the right-hand side will be the essentially the attributes of the images that you are importing into Lightroom. Excuse me. So the first thing I'm going to do is select some images to pull in. And to do that, you go back to the left and there's an import button. There's also an import button. Sorry, this isn't showing too well. With the pull down menu, the file pull down menu, and you can import in this way as well. But the easy way is just to click on import, and the window changes. So first you have to select a source. What are the images that you want to import into Lightroom? And so you can see here, I have my Mac hard drive, which is my computer. And then I have two external hard drives connected to the computer. And so I know that the images that you turned in are here. So I'm going to pull them in, or at least pull some of them in. So here's fall 2022 and your first assignment. And you can see, of course, they're all embedded. And so I will say I'll choose Geneva's images to pull in. And so here they are. And I can select all of them. You notice they're all checked. I can unselect all of them, like so, with these buttons down here, and then just select a few images to pull in, however you want to do it. So I'm going to check all. I'm going to pull them all in. And then up at the top, you can see it says copy as DNG, copy, move, and add. And generally, we'll be using either copy as DNG or copy. These are JPEGs, and you can submit your images as JPEGs, TIFFs, or RAW files. JPEGs are probably easiest because they're smaller, and so they import more quickly, and you can, they show up more quickly. You can fit more images onto your memory cards and so on. But if you select copy as DNG, then all of your raw images, if you've been shooting in RAW, will be converted to DNG, which is a universal raw file type. And some people feel these are better than the proprietary raw files that your cameras make. So for example, if you're shooting a Canon camera, then your raw files have a designation of CR2. If you're shooting with a Nikon, your raw files have a designation of NEF. So each manufacturer has its own proprietary raw file type. This converts those into a universal file type. And some people feel that they last longer. I don't know if that's true, but anyway, Especially if you're shooting raw, you can set it to copy as DNG. You can also set it to copy, and then JPEGs will remain JPEGs anyway, but your raw files will be imported as NEFs or CR2s or whatever the designation is, if you want them to be that way. Going to the right are things specific to these images, including where the images are going to go. So first is file handling. And you tell Lightroom as how you want the previews set, and I would just do standard. Build smart previews is a good thing to check, and this is especially good if you're coming to class or working on a different computer than your own, so that if you forget your hard drive, if you forget to bring it along, you can still work on the images with the Lightroom version that's on the computer you're using, if you have built smart previews. Okay. Don't import suspected duplicates. I think that's a good one to keep checked. Otherwise, you may keep importing the same images into Lightroom, and that will take up space that you don't want to waste, I would say. Make a second copy is useful if you have not yet pulled your images over from your memory card. If that's true, you can designate Lightroom to not only pull them into Lightroom, but to make a second copy to another location if you store them permanently on a different hard drive, or on the same hard drive in a different place. Add to a collection. We're not going to do that yet because we don't have any collections. But if you've made a collection that specifies certain attributes, you can also have these images imported there. They'll always be imported into a designated folder or area that you want them to go, but you can have them put into a collection as well. And I want to note one thing. One of the really cool things about Lightroom is that the work it does is virtual, I guess you'd say. It is not permanent. So when you work on images, when you make collections, when you work on images, you're not actually working on the actual document as you do in, for example, Photoshop. You're not altering the original file. It's as if you're putting a clear piece of acetate over the picture you're working on, and then sketching in. And those sketches, the rules of what you're doing, are stored, but the actual original image is not altered. And so this saves a tremendous amount of hard drive space. So if you've worked in Photoshop, you know that every time you make a change, the original or the file you're working on is changed. And so if you like what you've done up to that point, you need to save a version of that and then continue to work, or make a new version to work on, and so on. And that can take up a lot of room. In Lightroom, you don't have to do that. You can make something called a virtual copy and use that as a new starting point, but they don't take up really any space. So that's one of the cool things about Lightroom. So if you add your images to a collection, they haven't actually moved. They all go to the same place, but this is a list of images that you have designated to go into a collection. So that will show up, but not as a permanent change in location. Next is, so that's file handling, and then file renaming, which we're not doing right now. Apply during import. You can you can designate or tell Lightroom to apply certain things to an entire group of imports. I recommend that you not do that, at least for now, because you may not want every image to have a certain style or be converted to black and white or so on. Okay. You can always do those things after the fact. The next setting is called metadata, and that is the information about your image. And that information is stored in the file. So, and you can set what that information will be, or certain parts of that. And many photographers embed their names and their personal information, plus or minus, into each image so that it establishes that the image is theirs. So when you shoot an image, it is de facto yours. The copyright belongs to you. But many photographers feel that it's a good idea to state that. And so the metadata here with this setting can help you do that. So you can see I already have one that says CEDA's metadata, but I'll make a new one. And when I hit new, this window comes up, and the preset, this is just the name that your, the metadata setting has in Lightroom, but I can say CEDA fall 2022, for example. And then the basic information is information about that particular image. And I don't, I leave that to Lightroom usually. The camera info, do I want it included? Maybe, but I'll let Lightroom do that. I can make specific comments here, but I generally don't. What I'm concerned with in this case for me is the IPTC copyright, and that's the copyright information. So the copyright is mine. So, oops, I can spell my name right. So I put my name in, copyright status, copyrighted, right? No point in doing this if it's not. Rights, usage, terms, up to you what you want to put in. I usually say something to the effect, or words to the effect of image not to be used without the permission of the artist or artist's permission. So or permission of the artist. Copyright info URL. If you have a website or a URL, you can put it in here. And then the creator is your copyright generally. I don't put my address and phone number because I don't really want people to have it necessarily. But I will put my email in. So there's my school email address. If I have a website that I want to put in, I'll put that in there. And those are the things that I'm concerned with. If you want other stuff, that's up to you. But this is this is the information I want embedded into each file. So then I hit create. And now if you go back to the right-hand panel, you can see I've selected CEDA Fall 2022. My old one shows up here on the list as well. That's fine. Okay, so that is applied during import. Oh, sorry, one more thing. It says keywords. You can apply certain words to your images that will apply to each image. So for example, these images are Geneva's. I could put Geneva's name here. Maybe I would say, fall 2022 photo 4. So if the images in the future, any images have these words, these keywords assigned to them, they will show up in the same folder or collection if you want them to. And as you assign keywords to different imports, they'll start showing up in this list of keywords, so you can choose them if you want to. Okay, so I'm not going to do that right now, but you can certainly do that. You want to be careful about assigning words, especially if you've shot images in different places, different times, and so on, because these words may not apply to all of the images you're importing. So you want to think about that. Okay. So that's applied during import. Destination, here's the big one. First, how are they organized? And if they are in folders, you know, if you're importing folders, so that's what I'm doing here with your assignments. They're all in different folders. I don't want them organized by date, because some of you will have shot on the same date and I won't know whose images are whose. So in this case, I'm going to import them by original folders, but you may want to import by date or so, you know, or something else. The date format has a number of choices in how you want that date shown. For me, it's not a big deal, but I think for some people it must be, or they wouldn't give this many choices. So my preference is the year first, then the month written out, and then the date. It makes absolutely no difference to me, or I think to most other people, you know, what you have assigned, but that's my choice for me. But again, since I'm importing by original folder, that will go away. And now, most importantly, in a way, you have to tell Lightroom where your images will be stored. And so if you remember, I have my images going into this folder. This is my hard drive, and then my Dianza folder, then my photo 4, and then in photo 4, fall 2022. And then I have these other things in the fall 2022 folder, one of which is Lightroom. So within Lightroom, what I usually do is make a new folder that says images, and that's where I want my images to go. Okay. You can also see in this folder, the photo 4 fall 2022. This is the actual catalog that I made. Okay. And you see it says photo 4 fall 2022, but this is where my images will go. So I go back to Lightroom, and I again have these choices of in this case, where the images will go. On the left, my choices were where the images would come from. And here, my choices are where they'll go. So I want to go back to that same, sorry, that's right, sorry. Dianza, and then this can be a pain. You can double click, by the way, and then fall 2022, and then into the Lightroom folder, and then I want to choose images. Okay, and that's where these images will go. And now you can see within that, this folder shows up. It says Geneva, and there are 23 images I'm going to import. And now finally, I will click on import down here. And you can see there's a progress bar on the upper right. And then it will say this non-raw files were not converted to DNG. So these are JPEG. So I knew that would happen. And now smart previews are built. It says smart previews were built or already exist for 23 photos. They didn't exist here, but that's what it always says. I click OK. And now here are these images in Lightroom. So to the left, you can see catalog, all photographs. So I've imported 23, previous import 23. It shows where the images came from, from my hard drive, CETA, docents, and then this particular folder. And now I can make collections if I want to. And we'll talk about that in our next session. So this is, again, how to set your catalog, to make and set your catalog in Lightroom, and then how to import your images into Lightroom. Okay, so you guys are not here, so I don't know if you have questions, but if you do, of course, please contact me via email. And of course, I have office hours. So please feel free to come to my office hours. Yeah, that's it for now. Take care. I hope this was informative. Okay. All right. Have a good day. Bye now.